Live. Welcome to the weekly music tech news and other stuff podcast that comes to you live at 8 p.m. UK time from Manchester, England. This is Hot Pole Studios. I'm your host Adam Steele, and as always, joining me is Liam Bright. Hello.
Hello.
This is the Hot Pole Position podcast. Roll the intro. And back to us. How are you?
Ooh. Full of chicken and crab.
That is a good way to be.
I made my own trap kitchen. I'm not sure what trap kitchen is. Go on Instagram. It's insane.
I'm yet to be full of a nice healthy vegetable soup, but that is to come later on this evening. Yes.
Yeah, I'm far from healthy at the moment.
There's nothing wrong with that. Every now and again, go through phases.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Keen-eyed viewers may notice I'm back on a different microphone again. I'm using the SEX1A, which is the mic I was using before I switched to the Rode pod mic. That is just because I took the pod mic into the studio to make a review video for it, and because I'm an idiot and I was tired, I forgot to bring it back. I also don't have my usual lights because I took all the batteries for that film shoot that I talked about that was on Monday, and again left them at the studio as well. Yes, well.
Marty asked, how was Dream Theater?
Yes, someone follows what I do rather closely. Yeah, Dream Theater were really good, as per usual. I mean, they would be, because they are really, really good. And yeah, it was a long drive. But yeah, and back again in the same night before we did this film shoot. Oh, I was so tired by the end of that. It was good though. And yeah, it was a very good shoot, and I've been very busy in the meantime. I've actually filmed 2 completely different videos, and I do remember saying I was going to remix the Hot Pole Position intro. I've not got around to it yet, but I'm definitely inspired to now, because one of the videos that I've done was for a plugin called Gullfoss, which was really impressive. It did a thing I couldn't really explain. And being the nerdy nerd that I am, when I can't explain something, I'm like, right, okay, I'm in. Tell me more. And it basically is a sound gutterizer. It's like, if there's a nasty frequency somewhere, it pulls it down. If there's something it feels like it can bring out and you mix, it just kind of does it. And so I've been sat here, turning it on and off, going, wait, what, how, but, oh, okay, I like this. But it's one of those things, it's like good seasoning or really tasty drugs where it's like, I need to take less of this, otherwise bad things are going to happen.
Right.
It's one of those, it's got 2 different knobs. One's called Tame, which is if you've got something nasty going on, it can automatically duck it, and Recover, which recovers interesting sounds out of the mix. And yeah, you can go from 0% to 200% on both of them. If you go to 200%, it sounds crazy. But yeah, it's really nice. Minimal controls, just does a good thing. And I also did a video which I need to edit together for the Howard Benson vocal plugin, which was very impressive. And so that's going to come very soon. And I worked on a song for a regular client called Joel with that, and I'd never quite been able to get a vocal sound for Joel that I was happy with. He's got a very distinctive, very mid-focused voice. And I put the Howard Benson plugin on, and within 3 minutes, I was like, that's it. That's the sound.
Right.
So, yeah, that's quite a recommendation, that it just kind of did the thing, and it did it quickly. And that's great. I also filmed that video for the Rode pod mic and most of the video for Sontronics. And yeah, I've been very productive this week. But it's all stuff that needs finishing. So next week is going to be a finishing week, where suddenly I'm going to have lots of content. Everybody loves content.
Everybody does love content.
They do.
Content, Adam.
hello to everybody in chat, by the way. There are people in chat. If you've got any questions for us, do feel free to stick them in the chat on YouTube or Mixer or Facebook Live or Twitter, wherever you are watching the stream, because of course we multicast to just about everybody that we possibly can. Question in the chat from John Payne. Do you do gaming vids?
You tried.
I tried. I don't, because I just don't have the time. I've barely, and this is not exaggeration, I've barely played a game in the last 6 months.
I have. I've barely played a game in the last 6 hours.
Yes. Yeah, Liam is much more gaming focused than I. Between work and music production and child, that's my time taken. So, oh no, tell a lie. While we were on the plane to Nam and back, I played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
You did?
That was just about it though. That was the limit of the games that I've played.
Indeed. Can you take to use?
Those are words.
They are the words. Words and words.
Yes. So,
but yeah, if you want to watch Adam play games, go back through the videos. There are some Fallout.
Yeah, I think I might have taken them down actually.
Oh, okay, there were.
Yeah, there were. I mean, I'm quite a big fan of the Fallout franchise. More the older Fallout stuff than the newer stuff. I was like, I was playing this before it was cool. But I actually had Fallout 1 in 98, I think it was, because it came out in 97. And I didn't get it the first time round, and then suddenly I was in. You know when you get something, and then suddenly you're hooked. Yeah, that was me. So that was my thing for a while, and it took me a good 3 weeks to complete Fallout the first time, and then it took me about 12 hours the second time.
Oh, yeah, that's the way.
Yeah, so then I did go back and play through them, but I think I took them down from the channel just because they weren't really related to anything else that we do. Yeah. And it was confusing the algorithm quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So if I ever do go back and do anything like that in future, I do have like a second YouTube channel. There's nothing on there right now, but if there's anything that I do like that, I'll probably do that on there where it's not affecting the overall arching theme of what we do as far as YouTube is concerned. Yes. Yeah, it's been a very, very busy week, and I've got an even busier couple of weeks coming up. I've got a singer in the studio tomorrow. I've got a band in the studio on Sunday. I've got another artist coming in the week after. I mean, with everything else that I'm doing with all the YouTube stuff, that's keeping me pretty busy. Mm-hmm. Half-Life 1 will be reissued. But what? They already did Half-Life Source, which was like a redo. And then there was it called Black Mesa, the project, where they completely redid it? That's been a project that's been in the works for about 5 years.
Well, time.
Black Mesa, I think it's called. Yeah, Black Mesa. Is that ready then? Oh no, it's still coming soon. Well, it's early access. You can buy it for £15 or $20. Mm-hmm. So most of it must be ready. But yeah, I did play Half-Life a lot. I used to be quite a serious gamer. I put hundreds of hours into games.
Hundreds, rookie.
Well, per game. I never played MOBAs.
Rookie.
Never got MOBAs. I even put more than 3 hours into PUBG. Maybe 4, even 5.
Oh, I put a fair few hours into that game.
Yeah, many and lots.
Not to lie.
The other thing that I did actually, which
830.
Woof. I upgraded my second hard drive in my laptop today to be a solid state drive, an SSD. Mm-hmm. And that means I can actually run some of the games that I have on my hard drive really, really fast, but I'm probably not going to run them. But More than anything, it was for when I've got loads of video content and I need to scrub through it really quickly and transfer footage off cameras and off cards really quickly. Because I'm always running around like a madman. If I can take these 500 gigabyte hard drives from the camera and transfer that in a matter of 3 minutes instead of half an hour, that frees me up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of thing that really seemed worth doing, and it's already helped. I opened Premiere up earlier, and the videos that I filmed earlier this week, I practically flew through editing them because instead of having to skip through the timeline and then wait 3 seconds, by the time I'd finished clicking the mouse, the frame's already up. Which is quite a terrifying thought. I mean, I've never really been one for like a gamer kind of Twitch latency, but imagine being able to edit video on the same kind of frames per second that you play something like Call of Duty. It's goodbye, camera. Did Liam leave the call? What happened then? That was weird. Hello?
Hello?
What happened then?
Don't know, it just froze.
Oh. Just kind of dropped out. But we're back, and that's what matters. So, shall we look at the news?
The news, yes.
The news! Is it...
Oh yeah, I'm watching on the other monitor. Now I see 2 of you.
I'm going to turn the
So
volume
what's
up
in
on.
the news this week then,
Let's
Sire?
have a look. The news. So, headline article this week. Programmers, one of whom is a copyright attorney as well, generate every possible melody in MIDI to prevent lawsuits. Now, I thought this was really interesting. So, there've been loads and loads of lawsuits, especially in America, but generally worldwide, where one band goes, well, you've copied my melody, therefore you owe me money.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that even in cases where it can be almost proven to be accidental and just coincidence, because there are only so many melodies that it's possible to make, the claimant still wins and gets some money. So what these guys did is they started off with the usual conversation that you would have in the pub, which is, surely there are only so many possibilities. Yep. Why don't we make something that can generate all those possibilities? So that's what they did. They made an algorithm that literally goes through and systematically writes every possible melody. That was, let's have a look, there was a specific, every possible 8-note, 12-beat melody, which is, as far as copyright goes, the length, I believe, that can be defined. Because if you've just got 2 notes, like if I went dung ding, that could be from anything. That's not copyrightable because that's too simple.
And if it's longer than that, then you have ripped it off.
I don't know.
Like, most likely.
I guess so. Beyond 12-beat 8-note, if something is an identical copy, I suppose there is some beyond reasonable doubt that you have just stolen it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But that's what they settled on. They made a MIDI generator that literally, systematically, brute force wrote all of these possibilities. And they then stored all that on a hard drive, which then means that because it's a physical media in the US, that means that then they own the copyright.
Mm-hmm.
And then they released that hard drive to the public under Creative Commons Zero license. Creative Commons Zero, meaning they have no rights reserved. It's a very specific license that you can do that is basically the copyright equivalent of being a volunteer. It basically says, I have made this so you can use it for anything, please do.
Yeah.
But it then makes it clear, it makes it like, we have said this, please use it for anything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they've now, whether it holds up in court or not, and that's going to be the interesting thing, they've now made this so that literally any melody that's ever been made is now Creative Commons Zero licensed.
Yeah. The issue now, I suppose, is whether you've ever accessed it. So if you've never seen to access this, and there's no, and then you could still get done. Essentially, if you were to go onto this and download these files, you could then write whatever the fuck you want and never get done for copyright.
Mm.
But doing it after the fact may not hold up.
Maybe. I don't know, but one of these guys...
If you make music, you should download this, because then it's well worth it.
Yeah. One of these guys is a copyright lawyer, so he will know more about it than I. He's actually done an entire TED Talk on it, which the link is in this article.
And I haven't watched it, but I do assume he probably says, so go download the files and you'll be fine.
I would have thought so. I mean, I would assume as well this guy knows enough about this. I mean, hell, when you make a TED Talk about something, you should probably know a little bit about it.
A little bit.
Yeah, one of the guys in chat said, I don't want to get sued for using a common chord progression in a song. Just to be clear, this is about melody, not chord progression. Chord progressions are not legally enforceable because there are only so many permutations that I know of. Something like what they call the ice cream chords, which is, where people like the Axis of Awesome have done compilation songs of loads of different songs that use exactly the same chord sequence. Bart Chorale and Counterpoint, and basically modern popular music especially, go by certain rules which limits it to certain possible combinations, which means most pop music follows very similar chord progressions. And it's actually quite unusual for songs not to follow those chord progressions. You therefore couldn't copyright that, because that would just destroy popular music. The argument up to now has been that the melody is far more specific. And so, once you've made a specific melody, the argument has been that it is then yours. But I can think of loads of examples throughout even recent popular music history where two melodies are very similar. But again, because the chord sequences tend to be formulaic, there are only so many melody sequences that are going to fit properly. And so the chances of you coming up with something that's very similar to someone else's are very high. Good example, the one that they quote in this article, is Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down, which there's a very similar likeness to Sam Smith's Stay With Me, which was a very big hit only a few years back. And thinking about it, the chorus of Stay With Me and the chorus of I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty, in music theory they go from the sixth chord to the fourth to the root, which is a very, very common thing, ending in what's called a Phrygian cadence. It's entirely common, so the chances of you coming up with a very similar melody and two songs being at a very similar speed and that kind of thing, I don't think it's that unusual. But even so, Sam Smith, him and his team rolled over and gave some royalties to Tom Petty. Yes. So.
Fair enough.
That's that, and I just thought it was really interesting.
Questions like that we'll save for question time. And yes, Behringer Corner. I can't wait for Behringer Corner either.
I'm gonna have to find a Behringer Corner now, aren't I?
You don't have any Behringer Corner?
I have one. I've just not put it in the list yet. Actually, off the top of my head, I know what the Behringer news is this week. That's kind of sad, isn't it? Just while we're on it, aren't most melodies usually constructed using thirds and fifths? No, that's arpeggios. And harmonies can be constructed using thirds and fifths. Melodies can be anything you want, but they generally tend to be quite scale-based. But you can dance around scales, octaves, and arpeggios to make a melody, as long as it fits within. It doesn't even have to fit in the chord structure of a song. Actually, you can put augmented notes and diminished notes in there to make it stand out. It doesn't have to conform to the same structure as the chords. And yeah, a good vocal melody very rarely jumps around in thirds and fifths like an arpeggio. They're usually far more, not chromatic, they're far more diatonic. They'll a good melody backbeat, something na da 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 da. That didn't use the thirds or fifths. That was just a scale, but it sounds like a nice melody. If I went na da 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 da, that's not a nice melody unless it's in the right context. That's arpeggios, which are really useful in other contexts. Like as a bass player, you use that kind of stuff quite a lot to create inversions. You can get very clever very quickly, so I'm not going to go too deep on that because I can talk for hours about that, and to the uninitiated, it sounds like waffle. So waffle, rabble.
I had waffles for tea.
Oh, good for you. I had cold pizza.
Waffle.
And now this show Waffle the Wonder Dog is in my head because I have a nearly 2-year-old child. Yes. So, next, MIDI Association, MIDI 2.0. We talked about this rather recently and said that the specs would be made available for public download. It turns out that is now finished. So the MIDI 2.0 specification has been ratified and is about to be rolled out.
Cool.
And so, yeah, the public specs are now available. And so, yes. They agreed on the specs at NAMM. That's really interesting. I wondered why there was a stand for MIDI 2.0 at NAMM. I'm probably going to release the NAMM video tomorrow, the full adventure. And you'll see that we do go past the MIDI 2.0 stand at one point, which doesn't look very impressive. It's a tiny little stand with a big white sign with very thick black writing and just says MIDI 2.0 and nothing else. But it was right next to the Roland stand and right next to most of the major synth manufacturers. So I'm guessing they had some sort of private meeting where the important people sat down and did the things.
We weren't invited to the meeting. How rude.
How rude. I would have loved to have sat there for 8 hours and listened to them talk about CI profiles and property exchange.
You would have.
I absolutely would not have.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting to read about, but I'd be sat at the back going, this is too much for my nerdery.
Really?
Oh, there is nerdery which goes beyond my desires to be nerdery anyway. Oh, I don't know.
I'm not sure anyone buys that there's potential for too much nerdery for you, Adam.
Yeah, I suppose. I did watch a video yesterday about a team retrieving information off 8-inch floppies using like hex editors. Yeah.
There we go.
So yeah, you got a point.
There we go.
But yes, I am looking forward to it all coming with like the universal MIDI packet format, which should mean that any new MIDI device should be able to talk to any other new MIDI device, and they should all work. Should. There's never any guarantee until it's all, until you see it in action. In the first couple of years of MIDI 1.0, they all said they should work together, and they all kind of did, but kind of didn't. And it's only after they all kind of got over themselves and really decided to work together and work to a common score sheet, as it were, that MIDI became what we really now know what it is.
Okay. Fair enough.
Moving on. I, up until recently, thought Kickstarter was generally a bad idea. It's become a bad idea. But it seems...
You think Kickstarter's a bad idea?
Well, Kickstarters are a bad idea, sorry. Like, generally speaking, over the last several years, I've seen loads of products that have either not come to fruition despite completing their goals, been years over delivery date,
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff. And Kickstarter's reputation has kind of dropped, from the initial idea of, it'll be great. And it seems to be making a comeback recently. They seem to have tightened up their systems. I think the initial wave of Kickstarter companies have been used as the examples for what not to do now, and it's all starting to be a better thing.
I'm not sure whether that's just through your lens.
Oh, absolutely. Anything that I say is through what I see. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of companies that did perfectly well.
There's lots of companies that use it as just a lot of kind of Etsy style businesses that use Kickstarter as the way to do basic product development, so that they can do rapid prototyping through and know that there's a customer base at the end of it. So, I mean, I know Wormwood Gaming, for instance, is an example. D&D manufacturer that pretty much only release products through Kickstarter. They have an idea for a product, and rather than manufacturing it and put it on sale on the website, they just put it on Kickstarter. And if they get enough backers, then they make it for everyone and send it out. So it's kind of like shopping at Costco as well. It's like Costco shopping for artisan products. That's where it's found its real niche.
Welcome to Costco. I love you. Yes. No, that's fair. That's a side of Kickstarter that I suppose I don't really see, but that's not what I had in mind when I said that. Like, I was kind of referring to the companies that you've never heard of that are like, hey, we've got these great ideas and we're going to take over the world. And
all these companies start like that as well. It's just there's a lot of companies that have a successful Kickstarter and then keep on using Kickstarter rather than using it. So if you're using it to launch your business idea, it's nowhere near as strong as if you're using it to launch a product that would then be a part of that. Then is like the staple for your business, and then you go back to Kickstarter again and again and again for each new product. That's the smart way to use it.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, even so, like I say, the negative sides that I'd seen have started to clean up recently, and I think that people are now a lot more savvy going into what Kickstarter is and what it's expected to do and all that kind of stuff. And funnily, I've got 2 news articles here within a day of each other for very successful Kickstarter products for the music production side.
Okay.
So one is for Mod Dwarf. So this is a modular effects pedal. So I've not looked too much at this, but they had a pledging goal of €100,000, and that got smashed straight away. And apparently it's an effects stomp box where you can download plugins, and the plugins are going to be available on a monthly basis, which gives them time to develop new stuff, and they're going to come out, and apparently it can do effects, amp simulations, virtual instruments, synthesizers, MIDI stuff.
How much is it?
Let's have a look. Blah, 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 blah. There must be something in it. €255. Which, considering that the TC Electronics Plethora was the one we talked about last week, is going on sale for $400.
That's yeah.
Yeah, suddenly when you think about it as a value proposition, that might actually be quite decent for what it is. Yeah. So it's based around a 64-bit ARM CPU that's running slightly faster than a Raspberry Pi 4, with one gig of RAM and 8 gigabytes of onboard storage, which of course storage shouldn't really be too much of a worry for something that's designed to basically be a CPU rather than be something like a web server or it's not going to need huge amounts of storage. Apparently the mod plugin shop offers more than 300 plugins already ready to download. So it's Arduino based, but it's all 2 fully independent audio channels on the Duo channel version, and it's got some twisty knobs and buttons so you can change what you need to change. And the other one was the other one was called Daisy, and this one interested me because of its more wide-reaching applications. So this one's about the size of a USB thumb drive, and it's kind of a similar thing. It's a DSP chip. So this it's arguably got endless possibilities. It's got enough RAM on board, 64 megabytes is enough for a 10-minute audio buffer. It can run 192 kilohertz, 24-bit audio. Latency under 1 millisecond. So you can use this as a specific processor. Apparently you can set it up as a Eurorack module, as a guitar pedal. You can use it as basically the engine inside whatever setup you want to use. And it supports coding languages from Arduino, Max MSP, Python, Pure Data, and C++. So whatever language you're comfortable programming your DSP in, you can do that. And so you can design pedals or whatever around one of these and have it set up exactly how you like it, which I thought was really interesting. They've created 4 DAISY-powered devices. So there's a breakout board version, a guitar pedal version, a Eurorack, and a desktop synth version as well. With the price tag starting, here's the interesting bit, starting at $29.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is like the Raspberry Pi of audio coding. If it's at that price point, yeah. I mean, I would never personally be able to find the time to code for this.
Yeah.
But if someone just gave me a month off and said, here's a thing, go play, I could probably make something kind of cool. But I would, the first 2 weeks of that would be me spent learning how to do all the things. And then I'd sit down for a week and a half and go, well, what exactly do I want it to do? And then for the last 3 days, I'd panic and scrabble it all together. It's like I know myself. So apparently it's USB updatable as well, because it's USB, so you can change what it does. But it's got loads of pins on either side if you look at the picture, so you can update everything on the fly, connect pins to controls as well as audio in and out, that kind of stuff. But the USB update means that you can change what it does on a whim. And then other than that being powered, which I'm guessing you can probably power it from a couple of the pins, it's probably 5 volt. I mean, it's got USB, that would make sense. But yeah, the fact that it would be basically just a chip. You could stick that in a guitar pedal, like I say, or any other application I've not thought of. And that would be...
In a guitar?
Well, exactly, yes. Those are the kind of applications where, up until this point, those kind of ideas have been largely impractical. Having something this powerful and this small, as an embedded kind of thing, that's going to work very quickly. I know that Matt Bellamy from Muse last year before, had like an entire synth built into his guitar, like a VST synth, essentially, because he couldn't find a better solution. And if these kind of things exist, I mean, you could probably daisy chain, no pun intended, 2 of them to make whatever system you like and still have it small enough to be embedded wherever you need it.
Just a little USB port on your guitar to update it.
So, yes, I thought they were really interesting. That they and doubly so because those announcements came within a day of each other. Moving on, Kiesel guitars. Their Gibson controversy last week, they've bounced back and gone, well, if you're gonna have a go at us, completely sod you, because there's another shape guitar of theirs which basically looks like a Les Paul, which they've had a cease and desist letter from in the past. And so they've gone, well, if you're gonna throw cease and desist at us, we're just gonna go for it. So now the guitarist from Dance Gavin Dance, Will Swan, now has a signature carved top guitar, which basically is a Les Paul, but it looks like a really nice version of that idea. That's $2,000, but it's all entirely handmade, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah, I got an email this morning for the new a new John Petrucci Ernie Ball model being available at one of our local guitar stores, and I was like, oh, I bet that's going to be about £4,500. No, it was £6,000. So what, $7,500, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
That's a lot of money for a guitar. So a handmade guitar for
money.
yeah, a handmade guitar for only $2,000 suddenly seems rather reasonable. Yeah.
It does indeed.
And the other one was Mark Okubo Signature, which is a 7-string that was $1,600. And that's a 7-string that's got one pickup and looks like it would melt my face because it's incredibly hot pink. Yeah, I don't think I could look down at that guitar without going, my eyes! Ah! Each to their own.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, if you really want to see your guitar in the dark, you're the kind of person where they turn the lights off and you keep playing.
I like pink.
I like some kinds of pink. That kind of
Maybe
hot
not that
pink
one.
is just like many pink.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, from them to IK Multimedia. We actually have 2 IK Multimedia news articles this week. One of which people in the chat should like because it's to do with free.
Free?
I didn't realise, but as far as I can tell, IK Multimedia are now owned by Fender.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because I went through a couple of steps here, and I had to tick a box because of this, that was like, I agree to send Fender my information and that kind of thing. I was like, oh, whatever. So, IK Multimedia are giving out, if you want to get, basically, Amplitude 4 comes with a couple of amp models that you don't have to pay for. But now, if you sign up to their newsletter within the next, I think it's the next week or so, up until 9th of March, you get their triple rectifier and 4x12 recto for free. The triple rectifier is a real monster, and it's an officially licensed model as well. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, if you want your face thoroughly melted,
the melty.
Yes. I don't think I could ever own a triple rectifier because they are just so loud. I mean, there's loud and then there's stupid loud. It's a 150 watt guitar head.
Right.
Like, you can fill a stadium with that. It's got 6 power tubes in. You don't need that. Dual rectifiers are loud enough for most people, if not louder than most people need. And Mesa went, you know what we need? We need more valves in this to make it more metal. But there are certain guitarists who like the triple rectifier sound because it has absolutely no hint of like sag or saturation or anything in the power section. No matter how loud you reasonably take it, it just goes chug chug chug. So there are quite a few guitarists who've been well known to use the triple. Coheed and Cambria's most popular albums are all done with a triple rectifier.
Right.
It just has a certain sound that's got that real angriness, but doesn't squish. Whereas I personally quite like that squish. I've been looking around for the last couple of years for a Mesa single rectifier. They only made them for a couple of years. And the single rectifier, in my opinion, you don't need to turn the volume up too loud and suddenly it just is rock. Whereas, the dual is cool, but I don't know, there are good dual rectifiers and bad dual rectifiers for me, and then the triple's just silly face-melting silliness. And they weigh an absolute ton as well. Because it's 3 times as much rock as a single rectifier.
So get a single rec if you're weak.
Well, if you want that big sound without being the big person.
What about if you get 3 single rectifiers?
Oh, that's the dream right there.
Just plug them into each other.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to be silly and you look on eBay, there are things like Mesa made an amp called the Coliseum. That's ridiculous. That's a 300 watt guitar head. I think it's just a power amp section, so you plug like the slave out from your triple rectifier into a Coliseum and you can watch everybody in the front 5 rows die. it's one of those things where genuinely you strike a chord and your hair blows forward if you're facing the crowd, and everybody around you goes, "Holy hell! Turn that down. That's offensive." Which is awesome.
That's insane.
Mm. And there's a bass amp that Mason made that I always wanted called the Bass 400 Plus, which is a 400 watt tube amp, so it's even bigger. But because that's designed for bass, it doesn't necessarily come across as loud, but it's still like you can fill an arena with it. But yeah, if you sign up to the custom shop and agree to sign up to their mailing list, you get the triple rec and basically the rectifier cab to go with it.
Sweet.
I tried it earlier and they didn't let me because I already had an IK Multimedia account, so I was slightly upset. But if you've not used them before, do what the article says. And also from IK Multimedia, they've got a new reverb plugin that came out that replicates the sound of Sunset Sound Studio in LA, which is where stuff like originally it was a Disney studio, but then Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Prince, people like that recorded there. So it's got a certain sound. And yeah, so now the reverb is available. And the reason I knew about this one before I saw the news article is that yesterday our friend Mr. Warren Hewitt was doing a live video from Sunset Sound with IK Multimedia. So yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, right, okay, that's the thing. Cool. So yes, that. Now, I always had this article, always honest. Liam didn't just load this up for me. No, the Poly D. This is a review. The Poly D's been out for a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say this was the only thing I could find that had been posted in the last week, but I'm pretty sure we've already spoken about it.
I'm pretty sure that the news this week was that the Behringer Wing has been released.
Released as because it was. I thought that was the other week.
The Behringer Wing was announced a few weeks back, but it's actually like you can get one now. That was the thing, and I'm trying to find because there was a lot of buzz about it, and I'm sure I've.
It'd be before it'd be in.
Yeah.
Either way, this is Behringer Corner. Behringer Corner, brought to you by Behringer.
Yeah.
Unofficially.
Unofficially, yeah.
You can buy a wing. Buy one now and say that we sent you.
Yeah. And say that we should have one.
Do you use it?
If I had one, might do. I would definitely use it for live sound.
Yeah, but would you use it in the studio?
Again, if I had it, probably. I mean, it's so what's the word? So configurable with digital inputs and outputs. I could probably connect all the preamps that I have to it.
Okay.
That's been one of the limitations with stuff.
Use Reaper then, though, right?
Well, I probably could. I could just use this as an overblown control surface. If I had one, I could find a way of using it.
And just record into it at the same time as Reaper, so you've got a backup instantly.
Yeah. Use some of the inbuilt effects to record on a second channel on the fly. Do kind of baked in.
I mean, how much is it again?
£2,500.
I thought it was way more than that.
It may have been a guess that it was more than that. But yeah, it's
That's pretty. That's really good value, right?
Yeah, for what it is and what it does. I mean, you're probably looking at about 3,000 all in by the time you've bought an extra box that has all your analog inputs. Because it's only got 8 analog inputs on the back. Right. You're expected to use a digital snake box, which means that goes on the stage and then a single line goes to where your wing is.
Right.
So it's kind of an ecosystem at this point. But it's not that much more for the Behringer, like 16 or even 32 input and output.
Could you use that ADAT thing that you've got?
That ADAT thing?
No, you have an ADAT thing, don't you?
I have many ADAT things. I've got converters, I've got preamps, I've got a card in the computer that does it all.
No, what was the thing that was like the old school thing that you were using it the wrong way just to use the converters?
Oh, the Yamaha desk. Was that the one?
No.
Oh, I've got an Alesis ADAT machine. I actually have an
Yeah.
ADAT player. That's right.
Yeah.
Which I was using, like you're right, I was using it just for the converters. I'm still using it now just to run headphone amps.
Yeah. Would that plug into this for the extras?
If it's got ADAT ports, then probably. I need to see a picture of the back, but probably. I mean, it'd have converters, it wouldn't have preamps in it though. But it would be cool to be like, hey, I've got this technology from 1994 and I'm running this with something from 2020 and they still talk to each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, stock estimated at Music Matter, which is a UK store, 2 days from now. So by all accounts, they're already out there in the wild at this point.
Maybe I'll buy you one for Christmas.
Yay! I don't know, I'd probably rather have one Neve preamp channel for that money. Get more use out of it.
Yeah, but I want it. It looks cool. It's got flashing lights.
It does look cool.
So there you go. Ranger Corner is, let's save up and get Adam a wing just for the hell of it.
Yeah, subscribe to the channel, help us out on Patreon to buy a Behringer wing and show it all off.
And then we'll do Behringer Wing Corner. Oh, the Behringer Wing.
Yeah.
Or something, I don't know.
It has pretty lights, so well worth the 2,500. Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you don't know me in RGB.
Yeah. The Arturia audio fuse review just went out, and I kept the audio fuse, and one of the reasons is it twinkles on camera. Actually does.
Wow. No, actually reason.
Well, it was a small deciding factor. I mean, the main factor was that it sounds really good, but the rest of it was, yeah, it twinkles.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
there we go. The news complete for another week. Now let's have a look.
Notifications. Right, so someone, AK, asked early on, tips for tuning a snare.
Tips for tuning a snare. Right. I can do an entire thing on this. Tip 1, get new heads. Seriously.
Oh, drum heads.
Yeah, get new drum heads. And also a new head. If you can, especially the resonant head, the bottom head, people overlook that and don't change them in years. And they'll get dropped and they get pitted and that kind of thing. And that really affects the sound. And they're not that expensive to get a new one. Get yourself a 3mm or a 5mm really thin bottom head. And that can give it some serious crack. Secondly, get a pitch pipe app or an actual pitch pipe. And tune your drum to the notes. Seriously, it sounds really pretentious and really wanky, but especially for the bottom head, it lets you know that you are tightening it enough, and then when you have tightened it enough, that you've gone that far. And I tune my bottom head to a G, and then probably an octave above that, so it feels really tight. And then I tune the top head generally up to an E, and make sure that I use the notes rather than tension, because for me, when people try and tune drums like, oh, the tension feels right here, and then you hit it and you go, but it doesn't sound right. It's because, yeah, tuning is to do with tune. Tuning is to do with notes. And I've always found that if I get different drum heads, or one's new and one's old and that kind of thing, they'll feel different. If I can tune to a certain note, I then don't have to care whether the drum's slightly lopsided. I don't have to care if the hoops are warped. I don't have to care if my, tension reference isn't right or any of that stuff.
How do you know that you're within the right octave? Octave?
Okay, so when you're tapping around the outside of the drum and you get that note, you'll know it's in the wrong octave because you'll hit the drum. If it's an octave too low, it'll go.
Right. So with a drum, when it's within the right tension, it will be within the right octave of what you're talking about.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So like a guitar string.
Yeah, exactly like a guitar string.
Okay.
And that's the thing. If you tried to tune a guitar by tension, how awful would that sound?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we use notes on purpose so that we've got a frame of reference. Even if you think, oh, well, I'd rather go off tension,
Yeah, you can
tune
go
to a
back to it.
certain note, learn how that feels, get that tension right, and then from there try and use that tension. But then when you've smacked that drum really hard for the next 2 or 3 takes, it's going to be slightly flat at that point because you've then stretched the head by smacking it in a certain place over and over and over. So then you need to tune back up to that note you were at before. It's exactly like stretching a string on a guitar.
Mhm. And then when you want to be really OCD, tune your whole drum kit to the key of the song that you're playing.
Yeah, that does get a little bit... Yeah. But then I saw a rig rundown with Mike Mangini from Dream Theater today, and he says he used to do that, and he's gone now to tuning to the note that works best for the drum rather than for the song. Because especially in a full live show, you can't tune to the same as the
There
song
you go.
because there are so many songs.
There's a video for you though. Tune a drum kit in like say 3 different ways.
Mm,
One to how you think is right for the drum, one for what is right for the song,
mm.
and one that is just based on your tension, and then get the note for it afterwards. And then see if people can tell the difference.
Huh.
Especially the one which is tuned to the song, because I think that could be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, these drums are all hitting the right note. Or like, I don't know. So yeah, tuning it so that I don't know when you hit the drums, it plays a chord for jokingly sake, and then have it so they're all tuned to the same note. Like I don't know, you could do some
Ooh.
variations of that. That would be quite an interesting thing.
That could be interesting and also potentially difficult. We'll see. So if you try and
Yeah, and then
tune every drum to the same note,
yeah,
then
yeah,
one's going to be so tense it's going to pop. We'll see. It could work.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean, or something. Just I like
Yeah.
tuning drums differently to show people, like, because we've had this question before as well. So if you could say, like, I mean, yeah, tuning drums is one thing, but like the note thing and the difference that it makes, just to, because there'll be some people that really get like you going further than that, like you say, then go, oh yeah, you should tune it to the song, and you should really have, if you're
Mm.
gonna go in the studio, like tune your snare to the note for that song because you know it's got to be pure, man. Like do a video on like, okay, which is the right note? Because I don't know how many people could tell the note of a snare
Yeah.
because it's very different. It's not as anywhere near as melodic as a guitar string, is it?
No, but then at the same time, if you try and tune perfectly to the song, are your drums not going to get lost in the song?
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's what I mean. I think it could be an interesting video, like going through that
yeah. I'll
and
have a
like trying to
look.
mix them, like, do you know what I mean? You could then do a mixing bit, like how difficult it is to mix them because they're just lost in the mix. If you say if that's the case, or maybe they don't get lost. Who
Yes.
knows?
Well,
Okay. Do you think that generalization rather than specialization skills have become more important in the modern music production?
we talked about this last week, didn't we? That you really should become a T-shaped person or what they call an M-shaped person. You're not going to get very far in the industry now being really good at one thing. But by the same token, you're not really going to get anywhere either by kind of being okay at everything. You've got to be obsessed over at least one thing, but then have at least the basics in every other skill to back it up. Because you can't afford to pay everybody to do things for you and still be the money maker in your specific thing. At least not as a startup, at least not as in kind of a, independent. It's just too difficult.
Behringer did drop a few videos about the Eurotrack modules. Maybe we could just look at what Behringer's released on YouTube. Perhaps I'm old school, but they're twinted by the crap of the past. I can't bring myself to spend more than 5K on something with the Behringer written on it.
Ah,
Basically, yeah. Maybe I'm being a stub when I hear Behringer. I can't stop thinking of crummy plastic buzzy guitar pedals. Yes,
yes.
like that is still a very valid point about Behringer, but
Hmm.
it's interesting as to what they're pushing the company towards.
Yes, and I would say get past that. Because at one point that was definitely true. That at one point, Behringer was synonymous with cheap and fragile. Since they've built their own factories and their own fabs, not only are they really reliable, but the companies they've now bought out as well, they own enough specialists and technologies and basically can keep their costs down in other ways that they don't skimp out on stuff anymore. And like, yeah, so we're here, Behringer. I can't stop thinking of crummy plastic buzzy guitar pedals. Check out the video that JHS Pedals did on Behringer guitar pedals, because most of them are not similar but identical to their really expensive counterparts, just kind of in a cheap plastic shell, because that's how you keep your cost down to $19 with a profit rather than $100.
Yeah, they've changed the whole business model over the last few years.
Yeah, they really have.
Okay. Giuliano says, I am working with a 96 hertz USB 2 audio interface. Using more than 4 tracks at once, it starts to pop like it's heavy with no plugins on at all. Changing to a Thunderbolt 192 kilohertz audio interface at 20 gigabit a second, will that get the problem solved? Because I don't think it's the CPU, I think it's the connection.
That sounds to me like a combination of things. When you see 96 kilohertz, forget what the interface is capable of. What are you using it at? Just because an interface can do 192k doesn't mean it's going to be any good at 96 or 48. It might be, but that's what I call a marketing number. It's largely useless. You should probably be working at 48 or 41. So to answer the question, if you're using more than 4 tracks at once, it starts to pop with plugins and everything. What latency are you running at? What sample buffer? How good is your computer? Have you got any background programs running that are taking all this stuff? It's probably not your interface, and if it is, it's probably badly written drivers. Thunderbolt or PCI Express do tend to relieve a lot of those issues, but it's like putting a band-aid on a broken arm. If you've got other problems going on, they need to be sorted first.
So how would you problem solve that? So he says that his new interface that he's looking at is, well, the one he's got runs at 48 MBS. Does that make a difference?
480 megabytes. That's USB 2. That can make a difference, but again, forget transfer speed. That doesn't make any difference either, and I think I need to make a video on this because I'm getting these questions a lot recently. It's not to do with the transfer speed. It's to do with how long it takes. Yeah,
we spoke about this when we talked about CPUs, because it's the amount of data going through with audio is minimal.
Yes.
In all honesty. So you're going nowhere near 480 megs a second.
Yeah.
With what you're transferring.
And even if you were, it's the way that USB works. Like on USB, it's expecting to be on a hub. It's expecting to be on the same bus as other pieces of equipment. So it has to store its information up in a packet, and then when it's the USB audio device's turn, it can then send a packet of audio, but it has to wait.
Oh.
Hello to Joey Sturgis Tones, who've just appeared in chat. How are you guys doing? Good to see you on our podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're just finishing off our question time for the end of today's podcast. So if you guys have got any questions, we did mention the Howard Benson vocal plugin earlier, if you missed that. And how, I've just finished filming my video for that and used it on a track which I was very impressed with. David Imrie says buy an RME, and actually I think he's kind of onto something there. One, if we're focusing solely on interfaces, RME do make really good drivers for their hardware. They make their own processors in their equipment that are designed to work really quickly, whether it's USB or whether it's something like Thunderbolt or PCI Express. In the studio, I rely on RME, but outside of the studio, I'm quite happy with Audient stuff. I've got a Sono on my desk. We're probably going to have an Evo on Liam's desk in a couple of weeks when I get my SM7 back, which is still here, actually. I need to post that tomorrow. I've now got a box big enough to send it out for repair. Yeah, good stuff.
There was another... Dr. Nerd, kick and snare needs to be organic and authentic, but we're in the world of Kempers and Helixes, should the toms just be triggered by quality modern samples?
That's very genre dependent, I think. It depends. What is your genre focused on? Is it clarity or is it feeling? If it's something like kind of slow rock and roll with a bit of prog in there, definitely want the actual tom sounds. And you would go about it in different ways to get the isolation on the toms wherever possible. If it's something like really technical metal, I think you'd probably be fine with, like you say, modern samples, as long as it's played right by a drummer, in the kind of timing that the real drummer would do it. The samples then give you clarity because there's no bleed on them. Oh, shut up. Bloody phones. It's all very genre dependent. I'm always hesitant trying to blend tom samples with real toms because very, very rarely do they ring at the same note. So if you try and use them both at the same time, you end up with two notes ringing out at the same time, and unless they're perfectly either like in a chord or exactly the same, that's going to cause some really weird sounding toms no matter what you try and do. So generally speaking, you're probably going to have to go for one or the other. Whereas depending on how your overheads are set, if your overheads are at the kind of space where you generally hear the clicking on the toms, but you don't get much low end from them, or if you've scooped all the low end out of your overheads, so all you get on your toms is then you can definitely use samples in there that might be at slightly different notes to what the original toms were, because then you've not got a conflict of harmonics. But yeah, your best bet is wherever possible, try and get really well-tuned toms. Try and make sure the cymbals are nice and high so there's not too much bleed in the tom mics. And, do your best to try and make sure that you can use the actual real organic toms. But then if you've not got a drummer that hits them hard enough, or constantly misses the centre of the toms and hits them all over the show so it doesn't sound right, then, yeah, do it another way. And just to follow up and finish this conversation, he says, Garbage, the band, that's Butch Vig's band, who produced Nirvana, used to use foam-filled...
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, after he got all the money from Nevermind, he went and made Garbage. He's the main guy behind Garbage. Yeah.
Did not know that.
So yeah, they used foam-filled drums with MIDI triggers in them. Would that be the ultimate live setup nowadays? Kind of, although we've gone a little further than that. There are companies like, there's one in the UK called Joe Becky that make full-size drum shells that have mesh heads and proper piezo triggers inside them.
We still have the Joe Becky?
We do.
Yeah.
I need to repair the kick drum because the last person in the studio used it, hit it that hard, they actually broke the inside. I need to either
A Roland TD9 brain?
Yeah, which we don't use the sounds from, we just use it as a MIDI trigger, and then I use Stephen Slate drums from that. But yeah, that's the cost-effective way to do that, is use, something like a Roland TD module with foam...
And real cymbals.
Yeah, the real cymbals, and even arguably a real snare if you've got a nice snare, and even maybe a nice kick, depending on genre. If you're doing...
So just the toms.
Again, depending on genre, yeah. If the toms are the only issue you have, then yeah. If you are in the kind of genre where the kick, if you've got a drummer who's really fast but isn't hitting it very hard, then doing the same with the kick drum can be a real lifesaver rather than putting triggers on an acoustic drum. Why not just go the whole hog? And then, yeah, it could be with the snare that now that I've spent more time playing acoustic drums, I struggle to get the same feel out of the snare that I have out of a really tightly tuned snare drum that has all that bounce, which might again be genre dependent for someone who's doing that blast beaty type metal thing. But yeah, that's what I would say about that. And yes, that just about, I think, wraps this week up.
Good stuff.
So, thank you everybody for tuning in. And do feel free to continue this USB discussion that I see going on in chat.
Over on our Discord channel, which you can
Yes.
find a link to
In the chat. Yeah. So Liam's going to drop that in chat now. If you're not already part of our Discord server, please do. Hit the like button if you haven't already, because that really helps us to get these videos out to more people. And consider having a look at the Patreon, because that does help us out. I was being silly talking about buying a Behringer wing before, but in all seriousness, that kind of thing helping us out on Patreon does go a long way to things like helping us go to NAMM and meet some really interesting people so that we can do these really interesting videos like we're talking about with doing the drum tuning kind of thing. It's all stuff that bit by bit goes towards making this channel a really big, really awesome thing. And we already can't thank you enough for tuning in, but...
Indeed. And tell your friends, if you have a friend that likes audio production, that you know doesn't know about the channel, next week tell them to join us and say that you'll meet them in our chat next week.
Yes.
And we will give them a shout out on the channel.
Will indeed.
But tell a friend. Just go out there and tell one other person in the world. Imagine if every one of our subscribers told one friend, we'd have 50,000 subscribers. Think of it that way.
Yes.
And then if they all told one friend, we'd have 100. It's an MLM scheme for you just don't get anything other than for every one person you bring in, we'll say that we love you twice.
Welcome to Hardpole Studios. I love you.
What if you share your mouse with your audio interface? Don't.
Yeah, never share mouses with your interface. Safety first, everybody.
On that note, we'll see you next
On that note, it's time to go. Thank you, everybody. And hopefully I'll have a remixed version of this outro music for next time we see you. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye-bye.
See you later, guys.